Okay, 7th grade English students. This presentation will explain the 16 important literary devices that I need you to understand and be able to identify in the literature that we read this year. So I'm going to break this down. I'm going to go through the definitions and explain them one by one, each device. And I think we'll probably do about 3 at a time, so this will be broken up into multiple video clips. And I want you to watch the clip and have your important literary devices packet out in front of you and a pen or pencil. Okay, so here we go. First one, make sure that you're looking at the definition for alliteration and that you're filling in the blanks as we go. So alliteration is a literary device, a tool that writers use to make their writing sound interesting, especially when read aloud, because alliteration is a group of words that all start with the same sound. And so when it's read aloud, children's books use a lot of alliteration because it sounds so interesting. It rolls off your tongue in such a fun way. Descending dewdrops, little luscious lemons. Those are examples of alliteration, all the same sound in the beginning of the words. Tongue twisters are full of alliteration because it's hard for us to make that same sound over and over and over again, like Sally sells seashells. I can't even do it. That's alliteration as well. So take a moment to fill in any of the blanks in the alliteration definition, and then we will move on to the next literary device, the definition of the next literary device. Second literary device is allusion. This is a little bit more of a complex literary device. An allusion is a device or a tool that authors use to make their writing have a little bit more depth. So if you are trying to describe someone as very, very romantic, one thing that you could do is describe them as a Romeo, right? Because we know that Romeo in the famous Shakespearean play Romeo and Juliet was very romantic. Even if you haven't read that play yet, you know a little bit about it because it's such a widely discussed and known play in the English language. Romeo was very romantic, fell in love very easily, and so if somebody was referred to as a Romeo, you would understand what they were getting at. That's called an allusion. It's when an author mentions a familiar or famous person, or a historical event like a battle or a war, or a place, or another book, a story, or another writer, or a famous object. Authors assume that the reader will recognize these references. The writers don't need to explain that. They wouldn't explain why they were calling someone Romeo. They would just call someone a Romeo. If I were writing to you about something that my son James were building, and he built a tower with blocks, but he's only about 1 year old right now. He's not a great builder yet. I would say, oh, it looked, his tower blocks was almost crumbling. It looked like the Leaning Tower of Pisa. You would understand what I meant. I wouldn't have to explain that because you can picture that famous piece of architecture in Italy because we've all seen pictures of that before, the Leaning Tower of Pisa. You would know what I meant. If somebody were to comment, if a writer were to comment on the weather by saying, oh my gosh, it's been raining so hard lately that I think I'll build an ark, they would be referencing what famous story? Take a minute to jot down your thoughts on that. Who built an ark? What story, what person would we be referencing? Would an author be referencing if they wrote that down? Even if you weren't raised as a religious person, you should probably know or recognize that word ark, right? Who built an ark? If you know anything about the Jewish holy book, the Torah, or the Christian Old Testament, you've probably heard this name before. Okay, fill that in. Then the last one we're going to talk about in this clip is cliche. You know cliches because they are overused. A cliche is an overused expression that has lost its original strength because we as readers have heard it already so many times. Examples include as white as snow, or oh, my students were working, they were so busy, they were as busy as bees, or oh, I was scared to death. Those are things that should be avoided in writing because they're so